Okay, now we have sponging with water. Oh, and I forgot, there's actually an activity that comes before this that is infant specific that can be used with all ages. So just kind of playing in water is a fun activity for the kids to do.
Yeah.
And then the first presentation of squeezing a sponge should be done in just a bowl, like a large container that you can put the sponge in, and then the infant can just explore squeezing the sponge. So they're not doing anything with it other than they're just letting it soak up and squeezing it out. Letting it soak up and wringing it out. Whatever they want to do with it at that point. So once the child has explored using a sponge, then you can introduce transferring with the sponge, which is what this activity is for. And it's going to be set up in different ways depending on the age of the kids that you have. So if this was in the 1-year-old classroom, or if you even had an older infant who you felt like was ready for this, you would probably just get the materials out for them to work with at the table. It's not really something that would be left out because they can't prepare the materials for themselves. In the toddler classroom, to show that it's an available activity, you can have basically that would be the setup. So I probably wouldn't include the sponge because that's just going to get picked up and put in their mouth.
Yeah.
And you're not going to have water prepared for it. So you're just going to have this out, and that way if they pick it up, then you know
They need water.
Yeah, you know they need water.
Okay.
And hopefully you can, when you give the lesson, you'll make it clear when you want to work with this, you need to ask them for water. And so they can either bring it to the sink to show you that they want to put water in it, or ask you for the water. And then what I would recommend, rather than filling it up directly from the sink, because it's really difficult to carry a tray like this with water on it and it not splash, to fill up a pre-portioned cup with the water that you want them using and carry that over. So again, this is going to be dependent on the age of the child. When they're ready to start carrying water, so we talked about this last week as a preliminary exercise, then you would actually bring them to the sink with you, help them fill up their water, and have them carry it over to the table. The next activity is kind of introduced it backwards. You're going to want them to know how to do pouring before you would have that process as well. So if they're not ready for any of that, then you can fill up the container for them. Is that clear? Yes. So if they are ready for that, then the way that you would prepare this tray, and in the twos room, whether or not you leave the sponge out is kind of up to you guys. If you feel like they can handle the sponge being left out and they're not just going to come and swipe it and use it for something else, then that's fine. Put it in your mouth, yeah. And then same with the water. So I very, very, very rarely would ever recommend to leave water work on the shelf with it prepared with water in it. Typically what I would do is have a measuring cup on the shelf if you want them to be able to get the water for the container. So again, I don't want the child going to the container filling this up. I'd rather them have a measuring cup that they can securely carry. When you do that, you're going to want to have a fill line. So you see this has a line on it. Mm-hmm. That's as high as you're supposed to fill the water cup. And I would keep it relatively low the younger they are, obviously, because they're going to overflow it. Either way, it's going to happen, but it's at least practice. So if they are old enough and they've brought their tray over to the table, all the materials they need are on the tray, they've gotten the water, they bring it back over here, and then they can pour it.
So, wait, so I'm not, am I transferring it back over?
Mm-hmm. And that could be a legitimate question, like if the infant just sits, or the toddler just sits there and they're like, I don't know what to do. You're like, well, let's put it in here and you want to put the water over there. In general, you try to include as little language as possible in these activities, and you're hoping that they will absorb what they see you doing. So you're modeling the expectations, and then only supplement with language when necessary.
So with the toddler room, having that workout, should I already have like a measuring cup or something that I would already use? That way they can see like the process of it, like them not necessarily do it, but me using like a measuring cup to pour it in there so they can see like this is the steps that you do take.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea.
Yay.
You can also, I would recommend, especially the younger ones, having a towel available so that they can, if they do have a bigger spill or if they need to dry themselves
Yeah, I
off.
was gonna say we've been doing that.
And typically
Having a
with the
towel,
younger ones, you might put like a waterproof smock on
Yeah.
as well. So aprons, that's actually like a requirement for all water work in any age group is an apron. So FYI, apron, water. Cool.
I said it in that article.
Now, do you
too.
leave do they take that to the sink after and then dispose of the water?
So this again is going to be heavily dependent on what the child is capable of doing. In some classrooms, they'll actually have the child like pour the water back into the measuring cup, and then obviously that doesn't go very well with this particular container. Or they might have to ask for help from a teacher if they're all done to go dump it out. So it kind of depends on what you feel like your kids are ready for.
Okay.
So the cleanup process for this activity is definitely very important. In Children's House, what they would do is they would probably just leave the material in the container, take the whole tray over to the sink, and then dump it out
Okay.
in the sink and clean it all up and then prep it for the next friend. Most of your classrooms, I don't know if the 1-year-old room does, but the Choose room does have like a container of towels in it, correct? So having those towels available for them to be able to dry everything off when they're all done. Like you can do some with the sponge and then wring out the sponge, but obviously it's not gonna be like dry.
We have washcloths.
Yeah.
Yeah, washcloths.
Yeah, that's the
what
clean
now.
and dirty thing.
Yeah. Nothing. I'm thinking for myself.
Yeah. So the whole procedure of getting it set up and taking it down is going to be the biggest difference between ages. The actual presentation of moving the water from one container to another is pretty similar once they get to this stage. But what they do from there is going to depend on what they're ready for. So how much, this kind of goes back to the article, how much teacher intervention do they need? How much are they capable of doing on their own? So I would set it up in a way to make it as easy as possible for them to do the majority of it on their own, and just you having to step in and supplement with whatever they need help.
They choose to do the work and then they dump the water on the floor. We have to take the work away or?
So it kind of depends. That's going to happen a lot accidentally. So if it happens accidentally, then I would not obviously take it away from them. I might give them another chance to do it. If they're doing it on purpose, which is just as likely to occur, then make it a teaching opportunity, involve the child in cleaning up the water from the floors. Typically we get a bigger towel out, we show them how to soak it up, and then how to clean up the materials and put them away. So it's not that you have to put it away, like in the infant room, if you just got it out for that particular child, then yeah, you put it away. If it's in a classroom where the materials are on the shelf, then you would clean it up and have them put it back on the shelf for the next friend to work with. But if it's like a continuous thing where kids are constantly dumping water all the time, then maybe they're not ready for water work and you can work on other activities.
In my room, it's more of when there's a child doing water work, I have 2 other children who will go over and just dump it, like dump
they
the
love their
water.
stuff.
And then, then they're like, hey, look what I did. And I'm
No,
"Oh."
like they'll be like, get their hands wet and they're like,
Oh.
Or if there's soap in it, they
yeah. Oh.
What if they want to eat the soap?
You'd be surprised. There's a lot of soap eating.
Yeah.
That sounds gross. So yeah, I mean, with just like anything else in the classroom, you have to use your best judgment. And is there a need that they're trying to fulfill? Is there a specific activity that would help curb that type of behavior? So it's just identifying why is that happening? Are those children also interested in working with water?
That it's the same child that I'm needing some help with, like maybe having someone else come in and do an observation, because I feel like maybe there's something that I'm just not seeing,
Yeah.
because it's that same situation where, like when I've seen this child go over towards the work and I'm like, do you want to do work? Like, let's go get an apron on and stuff. And that child will sit there for a second, but then is done with it. But when someone else is doing it, then he wants to be right there and getting all in it. So then I even tried doing it when I was like, okay, let's try and do a partner one, like you squeeze in, but then it became a battle. So
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we'll set that on the back burner for now and just remind me that you still
Okay.
need that observation. Okay, so with this particular, since I dumped it back into the container, then I would go and just dump this out, bring it back, dry everything off, and then take it back to the shelf.